welcome back. This is Duke, and this is going to be my Nath of the Gilt-leaf deck tech. This is kind of a version 1 of this deck tech. I made this deck with just cards that I already owned last night, and so it's kind of a little rough. The deck was kind of inspired by my friends from my EDH playgroup decided to ban my Saskia deck because they felt like Saskia was just an oppressive general. I didn't really agree with them because I felt like we were playing against some other rather oppressive generals like Memnarch. They just felt like Saskia in a 1v1 scenario was too good and that they weren't really having fun against her. So this is kind of my revenge deck. I am not running an elf tribal deck. I don't think I have any other elves even in this deck. The point of my Nath of the Gilt-leaf deck is actually to be kind of an attrition slash stacks slash I'm going to kill you slowly theme. The reason being is I really like black and green as control colors, and there are not really any Golgari generals that do that. I think Nath is kind of the closest that does that, because he makes your opponents discard a card at random every one of your upkeeps, and he puts a token into play every time they discard a card. He doesn't really scream super control, but he does give me card advantage over my opponents, which is why I chose him to lead this deck. So let's get started on this deck. Obviously we have Nath himself. He is actually one of the generals in my commander decks that I think needs to be out a lot for my deck to work. And you will see that as I get a little bit deeper into the deck. We're going to start off with our equipment and artifacts. First off, I'm running Swiftfoot boots. This is kind of an EDH staple. Hexproof and haste, really good on Nath because I just don't want him to die. He's not really going to be attacking much, but still. Skull Clamp. When Nath gives me a token or two, I can just draw more cards. I'm running Phyrexian Altar, which is a rather expensive card. I think it's around $25 right now. If you can get one, or if you have one, it's a really good card. But it's also not a necessary card. I just happen to own one, so I threw it in here. It's a very good ramp card because you play Nath, and if you already have this out, you make someone discard a card and you get a mana back. So, very good card. Ashnod's Altar, also just here for the ramp. It's a sack outlet. You'll see that I have a lot of cards in here that punish people whenever I sack a creature or whenever a creature I control dies. So, it's a very, very good card. Smokestack. I used to have this in another deck, just kind of for shits and giggles, but I really like smokestacks in this deck because I do have some token generators, and when I have something out like smokestack and I have cards out like Dictate of Erebos that are punishing my opponents on top of this whenever I sacrifice creatures, it can get out of hand really quickly. And the fact that I can just sack Smokestack to itself just makes it pretty valuable. Like I said, this is an attrition deck. This is not supposed to win over any friends. So it's a very dirty card sometimes. Cards are a little sticky. These are brand new sleeves, so. Guess Grimoire. Whenever an opponent discards a card from his or her hand, you may draw a card. This is tremendous value. Even with just Nath out, you're drawing an extra card every turn. And there are a couple other cards in my deck that make people mass discard, and that's just super value. This card can draw you probably 20 cards deep into your deck if people don't get rid of it. Vincer's Journal. I am running into a problem when I started playtesting with this last night, where I was having to discard cards myself because I had too many cards in hand. So this gets around that with giving me no maximum hand size, and it gains me life for each card in my hand. You will be targeted playing this deck. It is not a nice deck. So gaining that extra, 8, 9, 10 life sometimes per turn is really good. Okay, so we're moving on kind of into the ramp package. I currently have 9 ramp spells, and I also am running Vorniclux in this deck. So first off, we have Soul Ring. Farseek, I think I'm going to switch out for Rampant Growth. It does get me, a Swamp, but, nothing too special. Corrosion Grip snuck in here. Save him for later. Primal Growth. Now, Primal Growth is actually pretty decent because, again, if you sacrifice a creature, you put 2 lands into play, and they're not tapped. Kodama's Reach. Cultivate. Explosive Vegetation. Sky Shroud Claim. Solemn Simulacrum. So now we are into the creatures. Like I said, I do have a couple of token generators in here, and this is one of them. Ophiomancer is a 3-mana 2/2, and at the beginning of each upkeep, if I control no snakes, put a 1/1 black snake creature token with Death Touch onto the battlefield. What's important to notice is that it's each upkeep, which means that I can sacrifice my own creatures during other people's turns and get value from this card. Next up, we have Eternal Witness. Erebos is in this deck. I am running this is a extremely heavy black deck, and Erebos becomes a creature very quickly. And he's just a good card. He's indestructible. My opponents can't gain life, which is great in an attrition deck, and I can draw cards with him. Disciple of Bolas makes me sacrifice a creature, and then I gain life and draw cards. Gary, probably one of my favorite cards of all time. He is such a good card, especially in this deck. When I playtested, I think I put him down and had 9 devotion at the time, so he can really hurt. And I have a lot of recursion in this deck, and when you start, mixing recursion with Gary, well, it's beautiful. Archfiend of Depravity. This is against, my friends that like to play token decks. It also just really hits home the idea that this is an attrition deck, and that people can only have what I want them to have. Acidic Slime. I really just didn't have a lot of removal in this deck, and I had an Acidic Slime, so he's a 2/2 with Death Touch, so he usually takes something with him, and you know, he has a nice ETB, so it's always nice. Indulgent Tormentor. Bloodgift Demon. Just some more draw. Endrick Sar, Master Breeder. I think that he's actually a pretty underrated card. I don't see him played a lot, but in this deck he works pretty well because whenever I cast a creature spell, I put that many black thrall creature tokens onto the battlefield, where that's the creature's converted mana cost. I'm running a lot of big mana cost creatures, so this card will get me quite a lot of thralls, and the best part is it provides me excellent mana ramp with Phyrexian Altar and Ashnod's Altar. Wormcoil Engine. I would almost want to say Wormcoil Engine is an EDH staple. I don't have it in every deck, but I try to get it in as many decks as possible. Grave Titan. Grave Titan is a 6/6 for 6 with Death Touch and gives me tokens. Just really good value there. Massacre Worm. Big value card. Harvester of Souls. Unfortunately, it says whenever another non-token creature dies, I may draw a card. So a lot of my creatures are going to be tokens, but since I'm making people sacrifice their creatures, I do end up drawing a lot of cards with this guy. Runescar Demon. Just a big, beefy tutor. Alright, so here's one of the sacrifice cards I was talking about. Whenever Butcher Malakir or another creature I control dies, each opponent sacrifices a creature. This is really good, especially since I am sacrificing my creatures all the time. It's very oppressive. People have to answer a card like this. Shieldred, another extremely oppressive card. These are very sticky. Avenger of Zendikar. He's just a token producer, and I didn't originally include him in the deck list, but you know, he will give me on average 7 to 10 tokens to sack, so I really like it, and he's got a decent body to him. Vorniclux, huge mana ramp, very oppressive, has trample, big body, has to be answered. Avatar of Woe. Like I said, I don't have a lot of spot removal in this deck, and so Avatar of Woe kind of acts as a spot removal card that happens to be on a creature. And the last creature is It That Betrays. So I don't really have a way to cheat this card out. It is a 12 mana card, which hurts. But if I have Vorniclux out, or if I ramped well enough early, this card can certainly come out turn 7 or 8. And it's extremely good. You know, even if it's not attacking on the turn it comes out, its ability can still trigger because my deck is already doing what it wants, which is whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent, put that card onto the battlefield under your control. It That Betrays actually really combos well to me with Smokestacks, because if I'm sacrificing tokens and they're sacrificing permanents, I get those permanents, and maybe the next turn I can sacrifice their permanents, and so I'm actually just getting a lot of value out of this card. So next up are my enchantments, instants and sorceries, and planeswalkers. For enchantments, I have Liliana's Caress, which is kind of self-explanatory in this deck. People are going to be discarding cards, and this just punishes them for doing so. Animate Dead. they're discarding at random, so they can't really choose what they're discarding. Sometimes they discard, a land, but sometimes they're going to discard a big creature that they were saving for late game. So Animate Dead does wonders for me in recursion. Megrim, same thing as Liliana's Caress. Leyline of the Void. Okay, so this card is in here because I want to say there's 2 people in my play group that have graveyard decks. Leyline of the Void I will never play unless I'm going up against one of those decks. I realize that makes it kind of a dead card in a lot of situations, but I feel like it's worth including just for the effect that it gives me. It also combos off really well with Living Death because when they sacrifice all their creatures, they actually exile all of them, and since they don't have any creatures in the graveyard anyway, then I'm the only person who gets value from Living Death. Alright, Dictative Erebos. Again, punishing people whenever I sacrifice creatures. Wound Reflection. At the end of each turn, each opponent loses life equal to the life he or she lost this turn. Really good when you combine it with a card like Gary, or with Exsanguinite, or even with something like Liliana's Caress, or something like Megrim. I have several cards in here that just do kind of constant damage. Wound Reflection makes it hurt even more. There's that Crozen Grip again. We're getting into our instants. I don't have very many instants. They are just spot removal, and there aren't very many because I'm supposed to be making people sacrifice their creatures anyway. So Crozen Grip, got Split Second, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Hero's Downfall, destroy target creature or planeswalker. It's pretty much a strictly better Dreadbore. Silence the Believers. This is an interesting card. I don't ever see it played. And I don't know necessarily why. Because you exile creatures and auras attached to them. And you can exile more than one, you just have to pay more for it. Now I do realize that it's expensive. However, in this deck, you generate a lot of mana, and so I think that I can pull it off. It's also very important to note that this card in particular does really well against Voltron commanders. Because if you run into a Ural, or, trying to think, Bruna, they don't really have a lot of equipments, they have a lot of auras that they stick onto them. So if you exile all the auras that they had, there's no way for them to get those back. So I think that's a very good card. Wretched Confluence. And my last instant, Fated Retribution. It is just a very expensively costed but very good recursion spell. It's, I can put any creature from any graveyard onto the battlefield under my control, and it gains indestructible. We move on to the sorceries. Black Sun Zenith, just a good board wipe. Exsanguinate, pretty much can win me the game. If I have something like Urborg out, because this is a primarily black deck, or Vorniclex, or both, I can just Exsanguinate everyone and kill them. Siphon Mind. An interesting common card. It works really well in this deck because it makes everyone discard a card, and then I draw a card for each card discarded this way. Basically, for 4 mana, you make 3 people discard, you draw 3 cards, and if Nath is out or any of the other cards that work well with discard, I just gain extra value from it. Promise of Power, good card. Living Death, I was talking about this with Leyline of the Void. You can, you can play Leyline of the Void, and then you can play Living Death, and then you're the only one who benefits. Increasing Ambition. I'm gonna replace this with Demonic Tutor. I did order a Demonic Tutor, so I'll be looking for that soon. Diabolic Revelations. I'm sacking creatures, I'm getting a lot of mana, and, I can just dig for game-ending cards. So, I think it's a good tutor. Seasons Past. It's a good semi-recursion spell. It gives me the ability to get, I would say, probably 5 or 6 extra cards from my graveyard back into my hand, which I would consider pretty valuable. Cabal Conditioning. This card is so funny. It reads, any number of target players each discards cards from his or her hand equal to the highest converted mana cost among permanents you control. Usually, I will have at least a 6-drop out when I play this. So I'm making everyone at the table basically discard their hand, which is extremely brutal. If Nath is out, that is a lot of tokens. If Liliana's Caress is out, that's 12 damage. It's a very, very good card in this deck. Decree of Pain, good board wipe, draws me cards. Ingaruk's Wake, also a good board wipe, and doesn't destroy my creatures. Rise of the Dark Realms. It seems kind of counterintuitive to run this card and to run Leyline of the Void. However, like I said, if I'm not actually playing Leyline because people don't have a lot of recursion in their decks, then Rise of the Dark Realms will just win me games. Oh. Planeswalkers fell down. Alright, so I'm running 2 Planeswalkers. The first of which is Garruk, Apex Predator. He is quite the man. He has a +1 of destroy another target Planeswalker, which is ridiculous, by the way. He also creates tokens. He also will destroy creatures for me. And his -8 is hilarious and can win me the game sometimes. And the last Planeswalker I have is Liliana, who actually cursed Garruk in the first place. She's just a pretty good card. A target player discards a card. Works well with my kind of discard sub-theme in this deck. She also tutors for me. And her -8, if she ever gets to -8, is also pretty much a game winner. So next up are lands. Like I said before, I made this deck last night with cards that I already owned. So I don't really have anything too fancy here for lands. I don't have Urborg yet. And I'm not going to go through basics. I'm really just going to show you my kind of utility lands that will be going in this deck and my dual lands. So first of all, I have obviously Temple of the False God, Reliquary Tower, Grim Backwoods, sack outlet, draw a card, Ghost Quarter, Tainted Wood, add black or green to your mana pool and play it only if I control swamp. I'm going to say that I will probably be running 10 plus swamps, so this will be giving me colored mana. Woodland Cemetery, And the last land that I currently own for this deck is Overgrown Tomb. I may or may not be getting a fetch land for this deck. Fetches in a 2-color deck to me seem a little pointless. I will be getting a couple more dual lands, but it's going to be a very black-centric deck. So I'm primarily going to be running a lot of swamps, and green's just kind of there for ramp and for a couple of their bigger creatures. So yeah, this has been my Nath of the Gilt-leaf EDH deck. If you liked the video, please leave a like and a comment below, and please subscribe. I am a new channel, and subscriptions really help get me out there. And also comment if there are any other kinds of videos you would like to see from me. I'm currently working on doing some Hearthstone gameplay, but I'm pretty much open to just about anything, as long as it's Magic related, or Hearthstone, or really any video game. Honestly, I play a lot of games. So yeah, guys, I hope you guys have a nice day. Peace.
Tell me pretty lies, look me in the face, tell me that you love me, even if it's fake.